What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. As we continue on with our indie comics weekend, we are jumping into something that I have been absolutely waiting for. I have loved it so far. We are jumping into Junkyard Joe issue number 1. Now, for those of you that don't know what Junkyard Joe is, I highly recommend that you go check out Geiger by GEOFF JOHNS and Gary Frank. It is one heck of a post-apocalyptic story. At the end of the Geiger first story arc, what we see is Junkyard Joe, a US Army, more or less robotic soldier. This is his origin story. This is where he originally came from, as GEOFF JOHNS and Gary Frank begin to expand on the Geigerverse. And from the little previews I have seen, man, are they expanding on it. Junkyard Joe is just that first expansion, coming from Image Comics and Mad Ghost. I want to give a big shout out to Brian Cunningham. They very generously sent me the first 3 issues of Junkyard Joe, and they sent me a signed copy by GEOFF JOHNS. Now, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright gang, so we are picking up with the Junkyard Joe origin story. We are picking up in 1972. In the midst of Vietnam, we get narration from an individual by the name of Muddy. As he writes letters home, we learn that the only thing these soldiers truly want is to go home. That this is what they think of, this is what they dream of, day in and day out. As the helicopter comes in, we are getting a brand new recruit. He is meant to be the replacement for the junkyard dogs, as they call them, with Muddy finishing up his letter, believing that he would want to go home more than anybody else, because when he gets home, she is waiting for him. She was everything to him. This is what helped him move forward. This is what kept him moving every single day, taking this letter and dropping it off to the mail clerk. That is when Sarge calls a formation, with Muddy going up to the new recruit, introducing himself, saying where he was born, so on and so forth. The new recruit, he says nothing, and everybody takes this as he just has really bad nerves right now, being a little bit scared. He has been dropped into Vietnam, that he shouldn't feel bad about being scared, because he would not be human if he was not. But they have got their orders. They are about to head out on mission. As this squad traverses the jungle, they appear to have been lost, believing that they should have hit a fork in the river 3 hours ago. The only issue, they had to make a detour. They could have gone through the rice paddies, but that would have made them a huge target. And so while the team sits here and tries to figure out what they are going to do next, the new recruit standing guard, facing out, looking off into the woodline. Everyone a little bit skeptical of him, because he has yet to say a single word to anybody. As Matches goes to ask Band-Aid if he has any of the extra dry socks, Band-Aid lets it know that he is down to his last pair, but before he can even get those words fully out, we see his jaw open up. That is because they have just taken fire. Band-Aid just took a shot to the freaking face. Sarge yelling at everybody to get down. That is when our new recruit jumps into action, pulling his rifle up and gunning down VC that he sees in the woodline. That is when we see a VC carrying a hand grenade. He is running directly towards our new recruit, with Sarge telling the new guy that he needs to get out of there. We see the new guy, he charges straight at the VC. He tackles him. There is a giant explosion, and the squad looks in disbelief as the recruit gets up, standing on his feet. They have no idea what they are looking at, as he clanks his way over to Band-Aid's bag, grabbing his clothes, his uniform, and his weapon. The team's not really sure what to do about this situation, but Sarge says that they have their orders. They know where the VC are. They are held up in a village nearby. Their mission still stands. And while many are skeptical because now they have a robot that is standing amongst them, 5 minutes ago, he was nothing more than a new recruit that they thought was going to die very quickly. Now they are seeing that he is some kind of robot sent in by the military. At this point, Sarge, he is just happy that this robot is not pointing a gun at them, that he appears to be on their side. And after what he just did, they are going to need an asset like this. As we pick up the next day, the squad's sitting down on their break and they are playing cards. Everyone smoking, everyone joking, just having a good old time. That is when Muddy, he goes over to have a conversation with our new robot. Really just letting him know that you are more than willing to come play cards with us. It takes him a minute, but he goes over. Everyone's still skeptical, but they go ahead and they deal him in. And wouldn't you know it, that robot, he took them for everything that they got. This is when the crew, they really start to get on board with the idea of him being here. Match is a little bit upset that the robot won all the chocolate bars and cigarettes, because what is a robot gonna do with chocolate and cigarettes? Even going as far as trying to bargain, trying to trade something with him. Having oil for his gun, he's thinking maybe the robot will trade oil for cigarettes. One by one though, we see the squad really start to warm up to him. We start to learn about who they are, about where they come from. For example, Big Jack. He's got two brothers that are also in Vietnam. One in the north, one in the south. Makes sense that he sits just in the middle. All of them talking about what they are going to do once they get back home. Whether it be open up a restaurant or marry the woman of their dreams. He is really starting to form a connection with the entire squad. They are becoming brothers in arms. That is when we see them on patrol. As they make their way down a path, there appears to be an ox in the road. As Matches goes in to try and scare it out of the way, it stands there and does not move. By the time that Matches realizes, it's already too late. There is an explosive strapped to this ox. As Matches goes to turn around and warn the squad, we see a giant explosion. In that instant, Big Jack and Matches, they are blown to pieces. As a tree falls, we see it hit the head of Muddy. We see the robot that they now call Joe, because that was Band-Aid's last name. Now the name tag that sits on the robot's chest. He stops a tree from falling on Muddy completely, but Muddy does take a heavy hit to the head. The VCs start opening up on them. The ambush is in full effect. One by one, we see members of this squad taken down, because that's the thing about a near ambush. When I went through infantry basic training, what they taught you when you had a near ambush, which is 35 meters or closer, that you have one option and one option alone: to turn your guns on them, lay down as much lead as you possibly can, and pray to whatever god you pray to that you can make it out alive, because the likelihood of survival in a near ambush is very minuscule. Lucky for this squad, they have Joe. We see Joe just smash in the face of one of these VC. The others seeing this, not knowing what to think, they take off running. Only one man left alive, and that is Muddy. As he carries Muddy to safety, Muddy is in a very bad state, but all he can think about is that they killed them all of their friends. Many of the squad, they had joked about maybe an angel had sent Joe to save them, but all Muddy can think is, if an angel did send you, why would they ever send you here? Why would they send any of us here? This is when he gets a message in his head, referring to him as Unit Beta. They tell him that the mission is over and that he must head back to base. It appears that somebody has been keeping tabs on him, but instead of heading back to base, he ignores these orders and he heads for the village. Finding where the VC are hiding out, these VC never stood a freaking chance. One by one, he begins ripping them apart, taking one of their AK-47s, and he is just laying down the lead, throwing grenades, shooting in all directions. As he is shooting, not even looking where he is aiming at some time, there appears to be a little boy standing petrified. Joe accidentally guns the boy down. down as Joe stares at this lifeless child, his mother coming and running out of the hut, grabbing hold of her son, sobbing hysterically. Joe looks at his gun and he rips it in half. He drops down to his knees, and Joe, Unit Beta, he shuts down. This is when we see a group of individuals appearing to be the quote-unquote elite. They learned that Unit Beta had finished its analysis of the war, and then it shut down. None of them really understanding what this means except for one man. It means that the war is unwinnable. It means that the war needs to come to an end. As they prepare their 8-point peace plan in the world of Geiger, this is how the Vietnam War had ended. Back at base camp, this is where we find Muddy as he heals up from his wounds. He talks about the robot that he had saw, but nobody else believes him. In fact, he is warned to stop talking about it or they might think that he has gone crazy. But Muddy never stopped thinking about Junkyard Joe, the man, the robot that saved his life. Muddy would go on to continue writing comics. He would write the Sunday Funny Papers. We saw small little tidbits of this throughout the Geiger comics. Junkyard Joe seemed nothing more than a comic strip, but only Muddy knew of how very real Junkyard Joe really was. And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. So first of all, a big shout out because the first issue of Junkyard Joe, a lot of the proceeds went to veteran charities. Gotta give huge props for that. But when it comes to the story, it is absolutely phenomenal. I loved every second of it. Junkyard Joe is just as interesting of a character as Geiger himself. And we have already been a little bit introduced to a character known as the Redcoats, an immortal individual, which is going to be very interesting to see his story really played out. But if you think this is the end of Junkyard Joe, you are very gravely mistaken, because Junkyard Joe, he goes on to live all the way through the giant war that happens, all the way up to the post-apocalyptic era that we find Geiger in. But this is just issue number 1 of Junkyard Joe. His story is going to continue. We are going to learn whatever happened to Junkyard Joe after that day in Vietnam. Absolutely beautifully written. The artwork is absolutely fantastic. It definitely does a good job at representing soldiers as a whole, representing the horrors of Vietnam, representing what it's like to be in those situations. For me, this is masterfully made, and I cannot wait to give you guys issue number 2. And I'm going to repeat myself, but you guys got to check out the Geigerverse. Go check out Geiger's issues 1 through 12, I believe it is. There is more Geiger coming on later on, but at least for the time being, we have these stories within the Geigerverse. Now, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your theories. If you would like to get caught up on Geiger, go ahead, check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It is going to get you completely caught up on everything going on with this series. If you would like to support the channel, you can always do so by joining the channel membership, much like Patreon, having 5 different tiers from $1 to $50, from loyalty badges to getting free comics every single month. Not only does that help out the channel tremendously, but you are getting tons of perks in the process. Now, if you are unable to do any of that, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit that notification bell, and with that being said, until the next breakdown.